We are.
So I'll call the November 14th monthly meeting of the Orono Town Council to order. Welcome people who might be joining us via Zoom. Roll call shows all members present except for Councilor Gardner, who is out of town today. Agenda review, are there any changes in the agenda?
I just have a question.
Yes.
On the consent agenda, is the plan to do them all and approve them all?
In the consent agenda, the plan is always to approve them all at once. However, any council member can ask that an item be taken off the consent agenda and we'll take it up over new business.
Could we do that with 22-214, that MRC nomination?
We can do it with anything that you or any other council member would like. Are there any other changes in the agenda? So we have removed that item from the consent agenda and we'll take it up under new business 22-214.
Tom, would you do it first under new business so we
I
can
will
keep
do it
Nancy
first under new
organized?
business unless you may have to remind me when we get there.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes of October 17th, 2022. Could I have a motion to approve, please? And a second.
Sure.
Thank you. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Okay, we will vote on the motion to approve. All those in favor? All in favor, 6 in favor, none opposed. Public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. I'm not sure we have anybody out there who would like to. Do we have somebody who would like to?
Would any folks in here like to comment on items not on the agenda? Okay.
So, Belle, do you see any hands raised?
No, it's just Dan Marilyn as an attendee.
She said I should introduce myself at this point. So hi, my name's Julian Blow. I'm gonna be the Orono City Council liaison for humane student government. I'm just here to monitor the meetings, take some notes down for humane student government, and let you know if students have anything to say about the agenda.
Nice to have you here.
Wonderful, welcome.
Julian, would you just leave your contact information with Nancy
Oh, absolutely.
before you leave? Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. We have one public hearing today. Public hearing to consider an amendment to the Orono, Town of Orono ordinances, Chapter 18, Section 135, off-street parking and loading, Section B2, to reduce minimum parking spaces for residential uses. So I'll open the public hearing and Kyle, I believe, is with us. I'm not sure you'll make some introductory comments on it, Kyle.
Yeah, I can just give a brief summary. I mean, we've talked about this at committee level, and we had the planning board public hearing because it is an amendment to the land use ordinance. But for anyone watching or going back who might not have caught up with that, just a brief summary is that the comprehensive plan recommended taking a look at the town's off-street parking minimum requirement specifically for residential uses. So right now in the ordinance, the requirement is that every time a new dwelling unit is created, there needs to go along with that 3 parking spaces. The issue with the ordinance is sort of that it's a one-size-fits-all approach. It doesn't take into account a number of factors like the size of the dwelling unit or the number of bedrooms involved, which kind of equates to how many people might actually be living there and driving to and from the dwelling unit. And creating needless additional parking has a lot of downfalls for any community. It increases impervious surfaces, which create additional stormwater problems. There's added costs for development and maintenance. It spreads out development when you're talking about larger residential projects, which can lead to more sprawling type development, making things like walkability and land use efficiency just a bigger issue. So the way we looked at the proposal was to amend it, take away the 3 spaces for every dwelling unit and make it more flexible in nature. When you're looking at studio, like efficiency apartments and 1-bedroom dwelling units, they would only be required to provide 1 space, and anything with 2 or more bedrooms in a dwelling unit would have to construct 2 parking spaces for those units. That being said, developers are free to build as much parking as they feel is necessary. The idea here is really not to provide a maximum, but it's to bring Orono's minimum requirement more along with what we see in surrounding communities and communities of similar scale to kind of better align ourselves with that and make a more flexible approach for people looking to develop more small scale housing opportunities.
Thank you, Kyle. Questions or comments? Something we've discussed, I think, twice. Any public comment? Well, anybody out there that wanted to comment?
There's no hands raised at this time, but there are 2 people online.
Okay. So if there are no further comments, we will close public hearing A and move on to acknowledgements by council.
Tom, can I interrupt for just
Yeah.
1 minute, just to clarify for folks who might not understand the process? Because this is a land use ordinance amendment, state law prohibits us from having a public hearing and adopting a revision in the same meeting. So we will have a meeting in the future to do that, most likely the regular December
Right.
council meeting. Because what I'm hearing is no concern, so I don't have to table this back to committee.
So back to acknowledgements by council members. Let's start over there with Cheryl.
Sure. So I want to send a huge thank you. We had our window dressers build. We had our efficiency fair since our last meeting. We had a lot of people show up. Rob was at the efficiency fair. Leo showed up to help out with the window dressers build. But I really want to say a big shout out to Public Works. Rob Yerxa and his team was amazing, and it was a successful build. We built over 200 windows for people. We re-plasticked probably more than that. Megan would know, but probably like maybe 30 more. So we did a lot. We were done early, and we really helped out the community. And it was a giant community effort, and I was very happy and very pleased with the turnout. So nice second annual Orono build. I hope we get a chance to do it next year. But I think it went smoothly because of and we had some public works people come volunteer. We had professors from the university come volunteer. And I want a special shout out to Orono Environmental Club, Orono High School Environmental Club. They showed up and they spent some time with us. And so a lovely example of community engagement. And I couldn't have been happier. And of course, Megan Hess, she was our pin in the whole wheel. So but big thank you, and I hope that people starting today are gonna stay warm, because it hasn't been much since it's been 70 degrees, but starting today. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, I do, but that was just commenting on Cheryl's. That was an impressive operation they had over there for building those windows. So that was really cool to go check out. And I was there for a minute, but that's about it.
We're almost there.
Yes, my acknowledgement, I'm not sure who it goes to, but I want to acknowledge the person or persons or group that replaced the tattered American flags on the bridge prior to Veterans Day.
That would likely be the University of Maine facilities.
I was glad to see that. And then one other acknowledgement, it looked like the Halloween trunk or treat was a pretty successful event in downtown Orono. So acknowledge our rec department for helping putting that on and getting what looked like lots of different people there with trunks.
Sonia?
Sure. These folks have stolen some of my things I wanted to acknowledge, so I'll come up with a new one, which is, I want to acknowledge all the hard work our high school students are putting into their production of Mamma Mia this weekend. It's gonna be wonderful, and I hear we should get tickets in advance because they might sell out.
Wow. Isn't that new for you?
No.
I'd like to acknowledge the hard work that town staff and election volunteers put in with the most recent election. I only voted once, but it was a long, there were long lines and it was great to see so many people there. And I know that our election officials and volunteers have been under some unique pressures this year. So wonderful to see them there with smiles and greeting everybody. Thanks.
I'll say ditto to Jeff since he stole.
Oh, sorry.
And can I say one more thing before we go on? Or Sophie, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna add to Jeff's comment about voters. I'm not sure if folks are aware, but we actually were audited during this election. We've had a group, the national group, come in and audit us. We had no idea what was happening until the end of the evening when they came in and said, "You did a great job." And we have an amazing team running our election. So my hat's off to Shelley, Bell, and everybody else who worked on the election. Thank you.
And I just have one more, the sun rule. So in between the efficiency fair and the builders, we dedicated the statue, I'm not sure what it's called, down at Webster Park, or we accepted it from Eric Pandicio and his team. And that was fun, and a group of fifth graders showed up that afternoon to check it out and learn how to multiply with the sun.
So I just did all the acknowledgement of our staff and volunteers in the election. Although I voted early, I did go up to the field house to see how the operation was going, and it was super organized. A lot of volunteers. I was very impressed with how well Shelley had organized things. So thank you, Shelley, for the good job you did. I would also like to acknowledge the Orono High School football team that played in the state championship game this past weekend. They were defeated by Old Orchard Beach, but they had a great season and got along very well. And the Orono High School girls cross country team, which won their state championship again this year. And congratulations to Coach White and his daughter Ruth won the New England Championship for the second year in a row, which I guess is just absolutely unheard of. She's only a junior, so maybe she'll do it 3 years ago. She was way ahead of the rest of the pack. So that's it for acknowledgements. Unfinished business, I do not believe we have any unfinished business. So we will move on to consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus order 22-211?
Tom, before we do that, could I also move order 22-210 and 22-211 to vote on separately?
Mine 22-214, you said 214.
Well, I'm saying yes, I did make a
You did.
mistake. It was 214. So now we have 3 orders off the consent agenda.
And with those 3 orders off, I'd be happy to move approval.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion on the consent agenda. All those in favor? All in favor? Okay, moving on to new business, then let's take up the consent agenda items that were removed first. And the first one is 22-210. Order authorizing the town manager to accept up to $2,255 in Bren Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Funds, along with expending $1,931 in state asset forfeiture funds for the purchase of a pup hook and installation costs for the police department. This is an item we discussed last week at our workshop. Anything that you'd like to add to that, Sophie?
You need a motion and a second as well.
Thank you.
Nancy is telling me.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
We get a motion to approve?
Oh,
Yeah. So approve, second. Thank you. Now,
I would love just a moment.
And I don't necessarily feel a need to discuss this at length, but I did want to vote on it separately.
So I'll give a 2-minute or less setup to it. The police department each year gets an allocation of justice assistance grant funds. And it is truly an allocation given to every law enforcement entity within Penobscot County. Each year they have to come up with a project or a piece of equipment that is supplement as opposed to supplanting budgetary funds. This year, the deputy chief came and spoke with you about a desire to have a toughbook laptop for one of the newer cruisers or the older cruiser, as it is on its last legs. The total budget for that was $4,185. Staff had proposed using the $2,254.50 of JAG program funds, grant funds, and $1,930.50 of state asset forfeiture funds that the town currently holds. That would expend all of the Burn Memorial Justice Assistance Grant allocation and leave $3,490.46 in the unencumbered state asset forfeiture fund.
any other questions or comments on this item? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 in favor. And opposed. And abstained. 2 abstentions. Okay, now order 22-211, order authorizing the town manager to expend an additional amount of up to $13,000 for the council chamber technology upgrade due to a change of project scope in the previously executed agreement between the town connectivity point design and installation LLC of Auburn, Maine, and further adjust the American Rescue Plan Act expense budget for this project to reflect this increased expenditure. Motion to approve. Linda, and a second. Thank you.
So this is Belle's. Belle is on vacation this week, so she does not have camera access right now, but my understanding is she does have the voice.
Are you there, Belle?
I am here.
Good.
So the additional items that have been added to the scope are mounting the larger screens that are going to be in the front of the council chambers for council to see and for the audience to see. They'll be replacing the ones that are currently there. Due to the increased size, they can't be mounted on the soffit anymore, so they have to be ceiling mounted. Ceiling mounts cost more and take more labor, so that is part of the increase. And then the second increase that is associated with the rack that the equipment will be mounted in the IT closet. When we first scoped out the project, we had thought that we were going to have a different rack available, but that we haven't installed that yet, so that has to be part of this project. This rack will be compatible with our new server as well, so that we don't have to add any additional racks. It has cooling fans. It will have the appropriate cabling racks so that there's no cabling on the floor or, you know, kind of draped across the ceiling, but it'll be on trays, and it'll get everything in our IT closet up to best management standards. And then we also have to install 2 dedicated electrical circuits, 220 amp dedicated electrical circuits, one for the equipment and the other for the command bench, which is where the operator of the system will sit. And so there's monitors there, there's camera controls, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's the increase in cost.
Thank you, Bill. and Thank you for joining us on vacation. Other
No
questions
problem.
Other questions or comments on this item?
This is all coming out of our ARPA funds.
Correct.
I would be curious to know, for what reason we feel that the televisions need to be replaced. I'm guessing that's probably not one of the major expenses involved in this 13,000, but how is the quality of these televisions?
It's not particularly
So,
good, but as good quality.
Yeah, so
ahead,
the existing TVs are actually going to be repurposed, and they will be mounted in the back half of the room, so that anybody who is seated in the back half of the room will have better access to what is on the screens being shown at the front half. I think council will tell you that they seem very big, but when you start looking at presentations on them, suddenly they get a lot smaller. And the current setup actually is a wireless connection between the computer and the TVs. So you get what's called ghosting, and the imaging is not very sharp. So we are replacing them with larger screens so that it's easier to see and understand wording, or words that are on the screen. And then which is why we ended up with the ceiling mounts. And then
Thank you, Josh.
it's going to be hardwired as well, so the quality improves.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? Any comments from the public on this item? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? And opposed? One opposed, 5 in favor. Okay, now to order 22-214. Order casting a ballot for Ella Bowman of Oakland, Maine, to serve on the Municipal Review Committee's Board of Directors for a 3-year term from January 1, 2023 to December 31, 2025. A motion to approve, please.
Move approval.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Sonia. I guess this is you.
This is me. I was just quickly looking. Each year, the Municipal Review Committee holds an election. They elect 3 of their 9-member board every 3 years, for 3-year terms. It has been, so this year, there are 5 people running for 3 seats. The 3 highest vote getters will be seated. The town, each town or joining member has 1 ballot. That ballot is weighted to the number of tons that they delivered in the previous years.
Number of tons.
Number of tons, we're talking trash. In the past, the council has asked, in the past, whoever has asked for our vote, unless multiples have asked, I have put them down. We only had 1 person ask. There are 4 other people running, all municipal type officials. So you had a chance to look at their information. I don't know what else I can supply, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I was just more curious, because we haven't been through this, or I haven't been through this. Can I ask, what, when you say ask for our vote, what form did that take?
This was a conversation with me.
Like a phone call or?
Yep.
Okay. Because when I just wanted to kind of weigh in on what I saw. went on the MRC website, looks like we have currently have 3 town managers, 3 select people, and 2 DPW and 1 vice financial director from the pool.
Yep.
And this person that we're talking about is another town manager, I think. I just looked through the resumes, and for me, I actually just landed on Eric Truerty, and I think he is. Okay, talking this is public, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like that he's a chemical engineering background. I like that has not previously been on the MRC board. I think fresh people are good, and I think this Ella has been on there, so. The other thing I liked was that, in addition to identifying, supporting getting the Hammond facility up and running, he put a high priority on a viable plan B while we're sort of in this interim thing, and he's the only one that did that in his resume, and I think that's pretty critical. So I was glad to see that sort of talked about, and I think he also specifically stated he didn't want to see our current situation, this in between that we're at, result in expanding Juniper Ridge, which I think a lot of people in the community would concur with. So I'm for those reasons, I would select him.
Say the name again, please.
Eric Truerty. I think it was the last.
It was the 5th of the bios and the second.
He
I
took
can
down,
look
down
at
his-
Surrey.
yeah, somewhere.
No, he's Blue Rose.
He's Blue Hills, Surrey.
And I think he's actually not an official.
Selectmen.
Is he a selectman right now?
Alright.
Okay.
I've got it.
Or was he a past selectman?
It says he's the chair of the Surrey Select Board.
Okay, so so another, another selectman, I guess, but, again, for those reasons, I like the resume, and the fresh not being on here, I think is a good perspective personally, but.
Sophie, do we have a date, an end date, to make a decision? When is this?
December 12th at 5 p.m., which is why it's on this month,
Yeah.
because we'll be meeting on December 12th at 5 p.m.
So, going back to Leo's comment, I appreciate that you read these so carefully, number one. I think if you feel strongly that this person should be the representative that we elect, I think you could make an amendment to this motion stating that. Wouldn't that be the correct way
That
to
would
proceed?
be the way to proceed.
I would like to amend the motion to nominate Eric Truerty. For this, to put our one vote towards Eric Truerty for this position.
We have a second to that amendment, motion to amend?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the amendment? We will vote on the amendment. And then we will vote on the motion as amended if the amendment passes, or the motion as it originally was written.
Before we vote on this, I would love to hear from anybody on council who feels opposite to Leo about voting in the way that we've sort of been encouraged. I don't know exactly how to phrase that, but about Ella Bowman, if anybody has any thoughts there, because I really do, I find very valuable, especially the part of Eric Truerty's letter around making not wanting to see us expand Juniper Ridge, both in terms of transportation costs as well as ecological damage. Those are, I think, very compelling reasons. I do find Ella Bowman's letter to be quite impressive. But I'm not sure which way I lean. I'd love to hear sort of more perspective before we vote on this one.
I found it difficult to get a full sense of people from a one sort of cover letter, and appreciated that Ella had reached out directly to us and was proactive in that way, which made that a little bit of a tie-breaking factor for me. I also was impressed with Michael Carroll's application.
Oh, Michael Carroll shouldn't have had.
Or not Michael Carroll, oh, my bad, Tony Smith. I misread, I was like going back through these.
I don't have a strong feeling,
Yeah,
either way, to be honest.
could see any of these people
I
being
think they
wonderful
will-
board members.
So this is a sticky place for me because I serve on the MRC board. But I would just suggest that the MRC board has had considerable turnover in the last 5 years. Considerable turnover, which if anything creates difficulty trying to get the job done because it is such a complex body of work that people are doing. When Ella called me and asked about Orono's support, I of course didn't tell her who would vote for her, it's not my choice. But when Ella was on the board before, it was around really helping to vision the hierarchy, how what we can do to fit into the hierarchy. And there is a perspective of understanding the vision and values of MRC, and quite honestly, the way we did things under her, which is a model that we're trying to somewhat return to. So, you know, maybe new blood is good on the board. I right now am the longest serving board member, and it would be helpful, I think, to have some people who remember back before we begin to.
You say you're no longer serving?
I am the longest.
Oh, you're the
serving.
longest serving. Well, and two of these other people are existing board members, correct?
2 of these other people are existing board members. I think, well, it doesn't matter.
Therefore, you are.
And I want to add to this discussion. So I know that Northeast Harbor and Surrey and Bloomfield are in conflict sometimes and with MRC. And I'm, you know, I just know that, and for very valid reasons. But I have trusted Sophie because of her experience, her longtime experience with this board. And I follow the MRC meetings, I follow Juniper Ridge, I follow all of I talk trash a lot, we talk trash at my house, we do it on the street. Anyway, when Ella reached out to Sophie, Sophie does have the most experience. She does know what they are up against. And it's been a battle, and it's been a journey. Since I've been here, since I've been on council, and we've had lots of conversations, so I have to go with trust, because I don't think Sophie wants Juniper Ridge to expand either. Nobody wants Casella to make any more money than they made last year. There's going to be some other conflicts that will be coming up, legal, lots of things. And I think that at this point, the best practice for us is to have someone on that board who knows what they're doing and understands the ropes and can see us through this difficult transition. And I want to see it work. I'm an advocate, and I want to see it work. I'll be very disappointed if it doesn't.
Thank you for that perspective, Cheryl. Any other comments?
Just that I would, first of all, thank you, everybody, for your input. And I do agree with Sonia that it's hard to make a judgment based on just this little bit of information. But I'm also grateful to Leo for taking this off the agenda so we can discuss it further.
You ready for a vote on the amendment? And the amendment would be to replace Ella Bowman's name with Eric Trevorgy. Okay. Let's, all those in favor of the amendment proposed. I'll join you. 2 in favor, all those opposed. 3 opposed. And abstention?
Yeah.
1 abstention. So the amendment fails. let's go back to the main motion. And the main motion again is to cast our vote for Ella Bowman of Oakland, Maine, to serve on the Municipal Review Committee Board of Directors for a 3-year term. We need any further discussion on that?
Do you need any further motions?
No, we had an
Motions
original
on the
motion.
table, okay.
So can you just clarify what weight in the entire voting spectrum is Orono?
So, there are 106,000 tons, so that would be 1,060 votes. And Orono would have about 36.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You ready for a vote? All those in favor of the motion? All in favor? Okay, let's move on to, before we do move on to new business, let me just make a couple of comments on the consent agenda, if anybody is listening from the public. We have 2 public hearings coming up that were set in the consent agenda on December 12th. One is to consider a contract zone by Zachary Pike at 74 Mill Street. That'll be an order, that'll be a public hearing on our December 12th meeting. And the other one I just wanted to highlight is the public hearing on the use of the ARPA funds. We have a proposal from our staff, which we will hear again about, and other possibilities can be added at that time. So 2 important public hearings.
So there is a third one, Tom, which is a public hearing on an ordinance amendment for section 3494 of the Code of Ordinances related to stopping, standing, and parking of vehicles. This would authorize the town manager discretion to set the date that enforcement of the winter parking ban would begin.
Thank you. It's gonna snow Wednesday.
It is, and you're gonna see some advertisement coming out shortly saying that starting Wednesday night into Thursday, we will be enforcing the parking.
I think it's on the sign
Yeah.
already.
People move fast.
Okay, moving on to new business. Order 22-215, order approving a change in the main public employees retirement system plan offered to qualifying members of the Orono Police Department for future service only effective December 1st, 2022, and further authorizing the town manager to execute any and all documents necessary, including the amended agreement between the town and the public employees retirement system to effect this change that reflects Orono's agreement to, and I hope you'll excuse me for not reading the rest of this. This is an order to complete the agreement that we have already made and signed with our police union. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Move approval.
And a second. And discussion.
The only other thing I would add is that it doesn't change the terms by which people are given in terms of who's eligible for this special retirement plan or not eligible. Employees will only be able to access this level of plan starting as of this service time after December 1st, 2022. And the reason that's important is from an actuarial perspective, everybody has been giving contributions based on a less rich benefit plan. This is a little bit richer. And if you noticed, if you read article subsection A, it tells you how many times the town has changed this plan. It's a long list.
Any comments, questions on this order? Any public comment on this order? Ready for a vote? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, moving on to order 22-216, order authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Centerline Utility Services of Bangor, Maine for video inspection and flushing of approximately 10,000 linear feet of sewer main on Route 2 at a cost not to exceed $17,725 with funds drawn from the Sewer Infrastructure Reserve Fund. And is this for Mr. Prue?
This is.
Yes.
Go
So
for
we
it.
need to identify the condition of the pipe or the Route 2 corridor from town line to town line. The DOT, as you know, is coming through with some work in the next couple of years. And we can't have them do that work and then find out we have broken pipes. We know we have some issues there now. So this work will identify exactly what it is, to what extent, give us, pipe condition. They'll give us recommendation for method of replacement, whether it be lining or open cut. They'll mark all services for us. They won't get on quick. They don't do it soon. We won't do it down the spring.
Well, they're gonna do it.
Yeah,
Just because of the,
but that was-
they
they'll
can't use some of the equipment. They don't use it if the day stays 29 degrees or below. They don't know. It'll just freeze out. There's, a lot of water being used, so. Pumps, hoses.
Certainly makes sense to determine what degree of condition that's in before we have road.
and once the if the DOT paves a road, there's usually a 5-year moratorium on getting into it, which would not be our preference. I think the other issue, and Chris has kind of talked about it a little bit, is this is very old pipe, and we really need to get a sense of where the issues are. We know few issues that have, we know about them because they caused a homeowner issue. That's how we find out. That is not an ideal way to find out where you have problems. And we don't have the capacity to do this size.
And they've been on this, just prioritize. There's been other areas in town that are worse. Route 2 is kind of a patchwork. There's not a continuous line that's straight down. It breaks up. There are sections where there's no pipe. There are sections where the pipe is not in the road. It's off the right way. Sections where it flows one way and then starts flowing the other way. It just depends on the topography of the land.
Will there be photos and videos?
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to share that with council. We usually only pick the bad spots.
No audio.
Thank you.
How does it cross the river?
Is it carried under the bridge or is it underneath the river?
It's a site. There's a site in below the dam. It's buried in the riverbed. Cased in concrete.
So nothing comes across the river. It
It
comes
comes,
across this bridge.
everything on the other side of the river comes across through a siphon.
Under the,
At the bridge or down the river.
It's buried below the dam.
So could I ask one question?
Sure.
Do we have any infrastructure funds so that we don't have to take from the infrastructure reserve fund? I mean, not infrastructure, federal funds. What am I thinking? No, it's not our fund.
are you thinking the municipal bond bank?
Yeah.
loan?
Right.
So I have put that aside for a project simply because we meet project standards, bidding standards, Davis Bacon standards. There are rules we have to follow with that. So I for $17,000, I would pull it out of sewer.
I was just, I was
But
curious.
great thinking. I like where you're, I really like where
And
you're.
what do we have left with the sewer infrastructure reserve fund if we take 17 out?
We have approximately $300,000. Which is low, very, very low, but we'll,
It is something.
Any other questions on this order? Any comments from the public on this order?
the only comment we have is from Miss Nancy, who does not have an order. I mean, a motion. This-
Nancy, how did that happen?
How did she communicate with you without saying anything? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So can I have a motion to approve order 22-216
Move approval.
and a second? Second. Now, any further questions? Okay, ready for vote? All those in favor? 6 in favor, none opposed.
So before you go on, can we just recognize the amazing job that Chris and his crew have done? We've had a lot of rain and rain that has come in chunks where there is significant amount of rainfall after wet weather events have already happened, which create incredible stress and strain on the plant. He and his team have done, even though they're really short-handed, have done an amazing job. We had the 2 events in October early, which we could argue that. But this last weekend, nothing in the plant. He's done a great job really thinking about process and how to manage the plant. I'm super impressed.
It's all a reflection of his excellent high school education.
Absolutely.
The basis of that question that I had was to make sure that we still have money in that infrastructure reserve fund, because it's not, there's gonna be more events.
Yes.
Yes, there were.
We are, we're in a climate crisis, right?
Orono did have 35 to 40 events a year.
Hmm.
We've been, not consecutively, but we've been 5 years without any.
Wow.
So, you know, our average number is 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It depends on the intensity. You know, and yesterday's rain, we can take that all day long. But it has to be all day long. It can't come in 2 hours.
Right.
It's the difference.
Enjoy your vacation.
Yeah. thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
So move on to order 22-217, order supporting proposed federal legislation, HR 6707, advancing equality for Wabanaki Nation Act, and further authorizing the town council chair to sign letters indicating the support as appropriate. Motion to approve.
Move approval.
And a second. Discussion. Sophie, you wanna?
So normally you would come to me to start things. This is a unique situation where this was actually brought forward by a town councillor, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I think you could speak for it better than I could.
I think you should put it.
All right, I'm putting you on the spot.
I mean, I talked about this last week, when we first, introduced a letter to you all over the last week. It was edited with, help from, Sophie and a couple counselors. Shout out to Sonia, Megan, and Cheryl. I just briefly, this piece of federal legislation, if passed, would amend the 1980 Settlement Act from the federal level to allow Wabanaki nations to, going forward, not retroactively, but simply prospectively, be included in any federal legislation intended to benefit all tribes throughout the country. So I think it's as said in the letter that I've drafted here, I think it's a common sense piece of legislation that would do quite a bit of good for the health and well-being of our neighbors in the Penobscot Nation, as well as in the other Wabanaki nations around the state.
Other comments or questions?
I guess I'd like to add as context that Rob, from what we've talked about, Molly and Dana, who's the tribal ambassador for the state of Maine, had asked us to bring this to the Orono Town Council because there's a false narrative that all of the towns along the Penobscot Nation oppose this legislation, which I think Rob and certainly I support this legislation too, don't believe is true. So that's part of the backstory, is that this was brought to us by Indigenous leadership. And it would be within our towns. What we've agreed to in the past is a resolution saying that we'll stand with the tribes of Maine and help uphold their sovereignty. And so this seems like an opportunity to stand by that commitment.
Thank you, Sonia.
I'd like to say too that I passed this letter through my committee at home. And he said it was well written and well and puts his stamp of approval on it. Maybe on, but I don't know. The public comment.
I guess I wanted to comment. think I appreciate the work and Rob bringing this to us and the work that's been done. And while I think I may personally agree with the sentiments, I do go back to trying to figure out what is our role with regards to these types of letters. And I do take serious the idea that when we speak as a council voice, that one, we need to do it sparingly. And two, I believe it does need to be related to Orono operations, because I think that's people voted on us for Orono operations, not really for our political views. So I feel like this oversteps the bounds a little bit from operations. For 7 of us to engage in political speaking as the town, which according to the latest census says there are 11,000 people, I think, in the town, on issues that are outside of operations, just feels like an overstep to me. And I hear and saw that we're tying this to a previous letter. So I think that's kind of compounding. We're not tying it to operations, which is a function. We're tying it to another letter that has been sent. And for me, that doesn't meet the threshold of operations. And I don't feel like this is our role. I feel like approaching these, the senators were elected the same as we were, but they were elected for that job. So I feel like that's a better use might be a campaign, right? 7 people agreeing to something to speak for the town versus 50 letters from people in the town. It seems like that's a little more appropriate in my view. So, and again, I appreciate that there was a 2021 resolution, but again, that's a position statement. That's not operational in my mind. So that's where I come down on this.
So I might, well, I will respond. I would push back a little bit in your definition of our role as merely being in charge of operational concerns. I think we're elected also because of our values, and we're elected to represent the values of the community, and people elected Sonia and myself in this past election with our handouts and everything being very clearly about justice, equity, inclusion. And I think this is very clearly a justice issue in our area. And yeah, I would say if you were to define our role in the way you have, it would call into question, and maybe you are calling into question, but I wouldn't go on with those words in your mouth, some of our proclamations, resolutions regarding LGBTQ affirmation in town, or anything else that has any mark of being slightly political. I don't think our role is to be apolitical or to be neutral as regards issues of justice like this. And there are also campaigns right now going on to procure letters from people all over the state in support of this as well. But we're also not the only town, I think, to actually make a statement about this. Brewer also, I think, has made I might be wrong about this, but I think Brewer has made a statement against it. And I think it's not unheard of or totally out of line as far as I'm concerned, but I do appreciate your perspective on it.
I think I'd make a distinction between something that is non-partisan and something that's non-political.
Yeah.
I don't think we should make partisan.
I agree with that.
Comments, but I don't see this as a partisan comment.
I really like that, because I am in support of this letter. But it's, I'm in support of the tone of the letter. I have no problem supporting it because it kind of puts our money where our mouth was a year ago. We said we were going to support, issues of sovereignty and self-determination for the Wabanaki tribes. This seems to me like it is the next step that we take, keeping with that. There's one line, I don't know if this is the time to like wordsmith the letter and just I think there's one line that maybe goes beyond that. I think it's the last line in the last sentence in the second to last paragraph, where it says, while there's a case we made through inclusions of the tribes in Maine and past legislation, is still not even approach that question. That seems to me falling into sort of argument rather than advocacy. So, you know, I might strike that line, that last sentence, but outside of that, I don't know, I would support the letter. Councilor Gardner, I know, has some other thoughts on this. She shared those with me. I believe she's shared those with you, Sophie, as well. So there might be some further changes to the wording.
So I think it's up to the council how it wants to proceed. Most of the time, if you were looking at a letter and you wanted to make changes to it, you're authorizing Tom to sign it. But I don't think Tom wants the responsibility of writing it to meet unknown. So I think now is definitely the time, if not wordsmithing it, at least discussing what the concerns are. And I know Councilor Gardner sent that to you. She copied me, but I feel like as a copy, I was the backup.
Sure. I would say regarding Councilor Gardner's comments, I took them to heart, and I think I made some changes in response. She did have some concerns about potential othering of the Wabanaki through my use of language in this letter as say that the cultivation of a more just and equitable relationship between Maine people and the peoples indigenous to this land. But I don't find that to be particularly othering. In fact, I think it is written in respect of the fact that the tribes are not of Maine. Maine has come about in land that they have lived on, and their cultures precede the state of Maine. And I think recognizing that this is about, well, at least recognizing that that legislation would create a more equitable and just relationship between the people of Maine and those who are not originally, or though it's strictly language because of the way that the state structure has come about. But I would simply push back and say I don't think it's actually othering. In fact, it's respecting the sovereignty and rightful separation of power that they're seeking.
Rob, does it change your intent if we change that sentence to say something like the cultivation of a more just and equitable relationship among Maine people, including the peoples indigenous to this land?
I don't want to define them as Maine people. I think that in all the work that I've done, and just to be very frank, I've been doing quite a bit of work the last several years on tribal sovereignty legislation at the state level. And all the work that I've done with them in trying to write and interact respectfully with Wabanaki peoples, they have consistently wanted not to be called tribes of Maine, but tribes in Maine, and lots of language like that to show that they are in fact a separate people interacting with the state of Maine. Yes. So I guess I would say I would not prefer that language.
Could we change it to a just and equitable relationship between the state of Maine and the peoples indigenous to this land? And then it's not ignoring the fact that there may be some people who identify as both.
I think that's a very logical step.
Seems to be consensus on that. Is that?
We get public comment. We get who's on.
Oh, yeah, anyone who's like to make public comment?
Well, I'm waiting for one person
That's here in the room.
who has more insight.
Margaret raised her hand here in person. So Margaret, would you like to come on?
Yeah, I would like to say that,
You need to come up to the table, please,
Yeah, come on up here.
and identify yourself, would you please? So you'll be on camera and recorded.
Right, good.
I'm Margot Lukens. I'm a resident of Orono and teach at the University of Maine. And I just wanted to enter into this conversation and remind the council that not only in the present situation do Wabanaki citizens lose the benefits that federal laws are intend to give to the other 570 federally recognized tribes, but that these benefits are for things like public health, help recovering from natural disasters, and promoting economic development. So other rural Mainers and people in semi-rural places like Orono, neighboring Wabanaki communities, are also to some extent losing out on the benefits that these federal laws could provide. And going forward, one would hope that, you know, if this law gets passed, that the ripple effects from federal assistance to Wabanaki tribes will actually help other rural Mainers and stimulate economic growth around the state, really bringing benefits to Maine generally.
Thank you. Good comment. Are there other public comments? Hands raised. We've had two suggestions for possible changes in the letter. Can we get some consensus on whether we are going to do those or not?
Tom, we do
Yes.
have one hand raised online.
Okay. Then let's,
Zoe
Yeah.
Lidstrom, and I'm allowing them to speak.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm Zoe Lidstrom, and I'm no longer a resident of Orono, but I was until very recently a student at University of Maine, and just recently moved for a new position in Lewiston. So, you know, for what that's worth, I'm no longer a constituent, but I would say that I think it's wonderful that the town of Orono is considering sending this letter. I think it's important that essentially an issue as important as this, which, you know, sovereignty, public health, all of the issues that come along with the self-determination of a people, that the town could potentially come together and make a statement. I liked what a council member previously said, that, you know, it's not a partisan issue, it's an issue of human rights and justice. And so I just want to say that I'm strongly in support. And, you know, it sounded like you were about to talk about some of the potential amendments to the letter. I think that the little point of wording regarding the people of Maine, I think that Sonia made a very just very practical solution to kind of sidestep that question. So, you know, I would support that little wording change as well. So thanks for listening to my thoughts.
thank you for your comments. So let's go back to the suggestions for change and see where we are with that. The first suggestion was from Jeff that we strike the last sentence of the next to the last paragraph. We okay with that?
I could live with it.
I can support that. So I think we can do that informally without a formal amendment. That's all right. I see the majority of people nodding. And the next suggestion was Sonia's to change some wording. Could you just mention
Sure.
that again?
Yep, so that is in the first paragraph, the second sentence, it reads. To pass this bill would be a significant step forward in the cultivation of a more just and equitable relationship between Maine people and the peoples indigenous to this land, is what it currently reads. And I would suggest amending it to a more just and equitable relationship between the state of Maine and the peoples indigenous to this land.
Can I just clarify, you mean state of Maine with a capital S?
Sure.
Are we okay with that? See nodding?
Yeah,
Okay, good. I think we're okay with
And I'm
those
gonna ask
suggestions.
are you done with the edits?
Unless anybody else on the group would like to make a suggestion for that.
Before this letter goes out or gets signed, I'd like a consult with the tribe. So it would be Mullion or chief or tribal council before we send this out, because we are allies. This is a government to government relationship. And that any changes that we make we need to consult with the tribe first.
Can I
Is
just
that,
clarify, is that something you're asking me to do, or?
I'm asking whoever wants to send this out, maybe Rob has been working Mullion, maybe you can run it past Mullion.
All right,
Quickly.
just to see what she thinks of the letter.
Right,
and then-
just an email or whatever, and just say, is this okay with you, just so that we have that recorded, that we have been respectful. And that we have not sent anything out, without their approval. Sure.
So I've made those changes and I will email them out so everybody has a.
are we ready to vote on the letter motion as corrected or edited? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? In favor and opposed? And abstain? One abstention. Okay. That concludes our new business. We now have some council committee representative reports. And I will start that for finance and operations. We met last week. We discussed the possibility of changing the service delivery method for curbside pickup of trash and recycling. And we had a discussion on that. We had a proposal for using the remaining ARPA funds for a sewer infrastructure project. We're going to have a public hearing on that issue next month. And we accepted the grant for the purchase of police technology equipment. Other committee reports. Jeff, did you have?
Yes, we had two issues on the community development committee on November 3rd. We discussed the candidates for the DEIB board. That wasn't specifically in community development committee, but that was an issue that we discussed in community development committee, and we had asked the town manager to get clarification from two people who had submitted materials that might have been incomplete because of the nature of the application, and we had asked for applications to go back out again. And then on November 7th, the community development committee had discussed issues related to the parking ban and issues related to the letter, which we just formally discussed in council.
Cheryl, did you have anything?
We were boots on the ground last night. We did not have any.
Great.
Yeah.
Town managers report. Do you have items for
I
us?
do. I'm gonna go fast because I know you're. Don't want to sit between you and dinner. We already talked about the winter parking ban, so just so you're aware, my plan is to announce that as of Wednesday night into Thursday. The ban is gonna be in effect, so I would remind people that they will be ticketed. If they are parking on the street between midnight and 8 AM. Until we stop enforcing the ban, which would be sometime in September. Spring, there we go, sometime in the spring. I would also remind folks that, even outside of those hours, the ordinance does have a provision that prohibits parking, on-street parking when Public Works is trying to do winter maintenance. So we try hard not to ticket with that one. We try to find people and knock on doors, but we just ask if it is snowing or icing and trucks need to get down, especially narrow roads, people refrain from parking on them.
Sophie, will the police be putting reminders on windows tonight of those people who are parking on the road?
Yeah, in fact, Dan Merrill is still here. So I think we just gave him a directive. That is coming. The Orono Economic Development Corporation would like to invite counselors out to the Caribou Bog, actually. Caribou Bog
yes.
Center,
Yeah.
outdoor center, there we go, outdoor center. I went on a trip with Dave Thompson around the VZ Railbed. We stopped and we looked from the outside. It is really impressive, but even more impressive than the work that's been done this one time is the amount of thought that has gone in by the land trust about how to balance habitat for wildlife and outdoor recreation. And so it's a trip that I would really encourage you to spend some time with Dave, if possible, not just say, I'll go look, because I learned a lot on my trip, my 2-hour trip. You don't have to do 2 hours. I did the whole thing. That I probably would not have gained if I had just gone out by myself. I do think talking with representatives of the land trust, we stopped Bucky Owens and Adam Toothaker and Adam's wife Joanna,
Yeah.
were putting the Chestnut Grove bed. And it was really interesting to learn that representatives from Mongolia were actually coming over to see how the land trust was managing that and other things around wetlands. So they would very much like to try to do this as a one visit, which means we have to notice it to the world. The issue that we run into is this is something that has to be done during daylight. And they have suggested that they're retired. I chuckle because I think they all work more than I do. They would kind of work around your schedule. So it would be helpful for me to figure out a way to get that information out to people so we can pick a date. I don't know if the doodle poll will work for folks. We have not had a tremendous amount of luck getting responses back in doodle polls. Is it best for me just to pick a day in the next couple of weeks? Is there a particular day of the week? I just want to make sure nobody misses it that wants to go, because I do think that the tour will be kind of important. And I'm probably not going to join you on that tour, but I'll probably send Megan Matsilla from Parks and Rec to join.
Do you have any more 70-degree days coming?
No,
up?
Bob says that was the warmest one we were going to see.
I would very much like to go. I cannot attend on Wednesday.
So Mondays and Wednesdays are pretty much out. That's what I'm hearing, because I usually have your attention on this. So
I'm good on Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesdays, Thursday, early, if it's early enough, if it were like a 3 o'clock, would that work?
Earlier would be better, although I'm pretty limited mobility at the moment, and so I'm not sure if,
I think you could do it because I think, I don't think they're gonna have you trekking
okay.
a lot.
Right,
And,
18.
I will let them know that we have a mobility challenged individual.
Yeah.
How's that? And I got a lot just from the outside because it was locked, so. All right, so 3 o'clock on a Tuesday or a Thursday? All right, so
It's, what time is it
For,
getting dark?
for
now?
1 hour engagement.
Sorry, we've got an hour, we've got an hour.
So I will tell them that they have you for 60 minutes. If you wish to chit chat with that group, because they will chit chat as long as you allow them to. It's remarkable. It really is. So I'll give them Tuesday, Thursday free and ask them to provide me a couple of dates. And just so you're aware, we won't publish it like a big, huge thing, but we will publish it in a couple of places to be legal. And would ask, since we're not putting an agenda together, that you remember, you really shouldn't be talking about town affairs. You should be enjoying their affairs, not our affairs. Reminding folks that Thursday is the Scott Scripture Memorial Community Dinner. We have, I know a couple people that can't make it. If you are planning to come and serve, if we could have you there by like 3:45-ish. 3:30-ish. We have left that as a choice. Just a policy, we're following CDC guide.
I was just wondering, if seniors had a special protocol.
We haven't, and I think the thought being people who are concerned, we are doing deliveries for seniors and people who don't want to camp.
It's a great activity.
Oh, yes, it is a lot of fun. And then for council, December 15th at 11:30. Oh, that's it. December 15th at 11:30 is a full recognition dinner.
Yes.
If that's something that you would like to attend, we love it when people attend. I just need to know ahead of time.
Where is it gonna be?
Well, we're still working through
Okay.
that. We think
Let
it's
us
gonna
know.
be at the Black Bear Inn, but we're not 100% sure. It would be my preference to work with a local business.
The day of the week?
It's a Thursday.
Okay, I will plan on attending.
Yeah. All right.
You don't wanna come, good man.
It's a really good meal. Yeah. There's a lot going on. I continue to work through a manager's report. I don't think I want to keep you much longer to go through, but there's good stuff happening.
Good. Any future agenda items of concern from council? Anything there, Leo?
Could we get parking on probably a committee and have them with all of this talk about parking? Could we get parking? We talked about the overnights and where we have access and cost. And I think with changing the ordinance to requiring us also with the ordinance parking ban. And I hear around town, it comes up and someone walking, oh yeah, parking, no place to park. So you hear all that stuff, and I think Rob brought it up before as well. I would be interested to know where we operate, what we're charging. Do we have potential to expand what we're doing? And those sorts of details with regards to off-street parking and all that.
So what I'm hearing is you would like a state of the parking address from me and appropriate members of staff that would help lay the groundwork for you to have a discussion.
Yes.
This is on our
If-
work
I don't know
plan.
if that happens at once.
But we can pull. I will tell you, when I look at the plan, moving forward, we are booking out into February at this point for time. So I will feed it in, when I can. But the other thing I try really hard not to do is hit a single staff person with lots of stuff. all of this.
And so this kind of request, do you pick the committee does this go to a committee first or? I'm gonna-
This
I'm gonna do that.
request would go to community development because it's impacting the exterior operation of the town. But if community development was really, really full and we wanted to get it through and finance didn't have a time, then I might slide it over there. There is really, it's an art and not a science and not always right.
As long as it gets
Art
there.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And,
Any other items of concern for council? Future agenda item? Okay, then public petitions, I don't think we have any. Public comments? We have any public comments? Anybody? Oh, and Neverland that wants to comment?
No hands up.
Okay. In that case. Adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Wow, 6:20. It's awesome.
Earliest I could be, but it's 7.